Hey, what's up? Welcome to another edition of The Mandatory. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also follow us on our social media channels. We're at The Mandatory TKO. You can also find us on the audio side. So if you got a couple of minutes, wherever you find your audio, make sure to leave a rate and review. Also give us a 5-star because that helps the channel grow. We got a pretty big weekend in boxing, a stacked card. Of course, it's Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. And then we got the Queensberry versus Matchroom 5-on-5. We're going to get into all of that. Also, this is an interactive show. So if you have any comments, make sure to drop them. We will be getting to all of your comments. But Bryan, I think we got to start off with the face of boxing, some may say. Canelo Alvarez vacated his IBF title, so he is no longer undisputed at super middleweight. What are your thoughts on this? Obviously, I feel like it's not like news where people are extremely surprised because his mandatory was William Skull. And I think a lot of people looked at that and they were like, I don't know if I'm too excited for that fight, even though Skull is undefeated. He's a boxer from Cuba. I believe he's 22-0, if I'm not mistaken. And now Canelo's not undisputed, but it leaves the door open for him to obviously have fights, possibly one against Edgar Berlanga or maybe a Terrence Bud Crawford, which obviously is rumored for sometime next year. But your thoughts on Canelo vacating?
Canelo transcends titles, so who cares? I love the undisputed moniker as much as the next person, but like, who gives a shit? We know how good Canelo Alvarez is, and I don't think anyone wants to see him fight William Skull, and the IBF wants to give him a title shot. And Canelo's like, I'm not interested in that fight because it's not a big money fight, even though every Canelo fight's a big money fight. But you get the point. Like, he wants to sort of maximize profit on the way out. He's going to be 34 the next time he steps into the ring because we don't expect him to step into the ring in September, and he's going to be 34 in July. William Skull's the #1 contender according to the IBF. Vladimir Shishkin is second. And that is a fight that, I don't know, 20 people are going to watch, maybe 25. Like, if we're being honest about it, like, I'm sure it's going to be more than that, but you get what I'm saying. Like, other than like the diehardest of diehard boxing people, and I think there are a lot of boxing people who might just be like, I'll skip that one whenever that comes. But that's likely what the IBF is going to order and whatever. Like, I think Canelo Alvarez, we want to see him against David Benavidez, really, but I would even take an Edgar Berlanga or a Diego Pacheco matchup next before William Skull. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would rather see Edgar Berlanga and Diego Pacheco fight against each other, and
Me
then
too.
the winner
Me
gets
too.
Canelo Alvarez. But
Mhm.
I think we all want to see him against David Benavidez. I just don't think that fight's going to happen. But we do know that Canelo wants the big money fights, and of course, William Skull. I think Canelo would have made bread off of it because Canelo makes bread off of all of his fights. But at this point, he has more than 60 professional fights. You think about the mileage on those legs. And, when his last fight was coming up, you could kind of just tell that I feel like Canelo is going to walk away before it's too late, kind of thing, right? Because some guys end up boxing and then you're like, oh, it was really sad to see them like that. For example, Triple G, in their last trilogy fight, that was a tough fight to see. But I think Canelo knows that his window is getting a little bit smaller. So as sexy as undisputed is, I think he's looking for, the legacy fights, and he's looking for those big money fights. Obviously, I think the biggest legacy fight for him to end off his career would probably be against David Benavidez, because then I feel like there would be no more talk about Canelo ducking people. Because I was on Twitter and people are like, oh, he's ducking William Skull. Canelo's not ducking William Skull, okay? That's not what it is. He's looking for the big money fight. So I hopefully we do get him and David Benavidez, but right now it seems more likely that we could possibly get him and Terrence Bud Crawford.
Yeah, that's the other fight. Listen, a lot of people are excited about that. We talked about Undisputed in a segment, the boxing game coming out. You should go check that out on our YouTube. A little more evergreen there. And the reason why I bring that up is because in the trailer, they lean into that. Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford is the fantasy fight that people want to make, which we'll see how Terrence Crawford looks at 154 in a couple months. And I assume that he's going to excel, and that'll drum up some more noise. Like, hey, can he get the Canelo fight at a
Go up 6 more
reasonable weight?
pounds,
Yeah,
160, right?
I
Because
don't think Canelo. I don't think Canelo. Probably 164. Like, it'll be some sort of catch weight, 65, something like that. I actually think Terrence Crawford will just go full blown to super middleweight. Like he's crazy enough. Like he'll just do it.
Yeah, you know what? I think Terrence Bud Crawford wouldn't be scared to go up to 168, but I do think the fair thing would be possibly a catch weight like 163, 164. But I highly doubt Canelo's going to want to come back down to 160. But I feel like 160 would be perfect for them. But we'll see what happens. And we'll also see if there's a possible fight between him and Edgar Berlanga. We'll see if he ends up fighting another Charlo brother. Who knows? Probably not. But, I think we all want to see him and David Benavidez. And once again, he is not ducking William Skull. So we
No,
could
like
stop the narrative there.
like
Those tweets are ridiculous.
no one do people seriously think William Skull would beat this dude? Like no, like William Skull's clearly got talent, but like name me the best person he's beaten. Honestly, he doesn't have a better resume than Diego Pacheco or Edgar Berlanga. Like, I'm not sure what he did to become the number one contender. Like, boxing is probably the answer, and shit just happens. But he was fighting 8-rounders the last time we've seen him. So
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, though. I would watch that fight with him and Vladimir Shishkin. I think that would be a good fight.
I'll watch it. We'll be 2 of the 20 people watching it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I'd be into that fight. But nonetheless, I think this is a good move for Canelo. We know that, he's one of the greatest fighters of his generation. And just because he's not undisputed anymore, that doesn't mean anything. And I think this just sets up a big fight that is soon to come with Canelo Alvarez. So hopefully we'll hear more news about that soon. Let us know in the comments below who you want to see Canelo fight next. And obviously, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button because it helps the channel grow. Bryan, any final thoughts before we move on to the betting section of Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang?
Yeah, comment from Anthony Beck, friend of the show. LOL, Bryan, how'd you get Shantelle up this early? Chantelle's actually an early bird. Like in the West Coast, she still be waking up before me some days.
Yeah, it's more like I got Bryan up early. That's what it's more like. But nonetheless, yeah, I'm usually up before Bryan. I'm usually up at like 5 a.m. here on the West Coast.
I'd be up at 7 something, 8 something sometime.
Yeah,
I don't do 5 a.m. on the East Coast. No chance.
No. When we do the Inouye fights, I have to tell Bryan, we've done it before. And he'll be like, you know what? Yeah, because it's closer to 8 when we do the post-fight shows. But nonetheless, we got a pretty big fight coming up this weekend. And this isn't the main one that I was excited about on this card. It really was Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Obviously, that's not happening. But this is a very, very good fight with 2 guys that are aging fighters. One of them I thought looked absolutely horrible in his last fight, but he has what you call the power in that right hand. Deontay Wilder is a plus 120 straight up on the money line, and Zhilei Zhang, the favorite in this one, not surprising, a minus 150, but pretty close there on the lines. And honestly, Bryan, it kind of makes sense because both these guys are aging. I think Zhilei Zhang is like 40 or 41 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Deontay Wilder looked terrible in his last fight. This is a very, very interesting fight because I think both of their careers are on the line. These are career-defining moments. Also, if Deontay Wilder looks like how he did in his last fight against Joseph Parker, I would want him to retire.
Same.
I wouldn't want to see any more of Deontay Wilder. And this is what I was talking about when fighters stay a little bit too long in boxing. I don't think we're going to see Canelo Alvarez do that. That's what I was saying. So your thoughts on the line and break down this fight and give me your best bet.
Before we get into the best bet, because I actually want to talk this out a little bit. I do know what I'm betting, which I've already put out there in Action Network stuff that actually hasn't dropped yet, so I haven't put it out there yet. Anyway, I think the line is fair. It actually was more towards Zhilei Zhang earlier this week, and it's moved toward Deontay Wilder. On DraftKings, they had, as of last night, approximately 76% of the money was coming in on Deontay Wilder, which I found very interesting, but also like he's so like you want to bet him because you've seen it so many times. You've seen him come through. I'm somebody who's made like plenty of money betting Deontay Wilder by knockout in specific rounds and things of that nature. A lot of people probably don't know. A lot of people betting on this might not know much of Zhilei Zhang, who he is. I think they should. We were people who were saying before he fought Joe Joyce the first time, hey, he could actually win this fight, even though he's plus 1,000 as an underdog. Like he could knock out Joe Joyce. He ended up doing that, and then he knocked him out even worse the second time. So I think with Zhilei Zhang and Deontay Wilder, like this is a fantastic crossroads bout. Loser leaves town match. You said it perfectly. Loser's probably going to have to seriously consider retirement. And I want to, right before I get into the pick, I want to sort of talk out like, do we think Deontay Wilder is actually going to quote unquote learn from those mistakes and put forth a more assertive performance this time? Because it also looked like, and I think there's reasons why this could be the case, but it also looked like he was deploying the same style against Joseph Parker as he did against Robert Helenius. The difference is he just caught Robert Helenius early.
Yeah, and I think he couldn't get into a rhythm. Like he couldn't really set up his right hand in that fight against Joseph Parker, because the one thing that Joseph Parker did really well in that fight is he established the jab and he worked it really well. So usually when we see Deontay Wilder land that right hand, he has to set it up, and he just never got into a rhythm in that fight. That's what I thought. And I don't know if it's the age, I don't know if it's the mileage on the legs, because he's been in wars with Tyson Fury. Absolute wars. And you have to think at some point that's going to catch up to you. And I don't know if it's caught up to Deontay Wilder, but in that last fight, I was thinking, man, I feel like Wilder lost it. Like it's gone. He just didn't look like himself. It wasn't a good fight for him. And even after that fight, I was thinking maybe it's time for Deontay Wilder to hang up the gloves. Listen, the one thing that they always say, you look at Luis Ortiz, power goes last, right? And Deontay Wilder still has that power punch, that right hand that's absolutely filthy. And if you have that, you always have a chance. And in boxing, one punch can change everything. And Zhilei Zhang gets hit, and he's a southpaw. And what's the southpaw killer? A nasty right hand. So really, Deontay Wilder has a chance in this fight because he has the power, he has the right hand. But as for Zhilei Zhang, he's very tough. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. Before he lost that, I believe it was a majority decision loss against Joseph Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was going to knock out Joseph Parker. Like
Same.
I was writing, I was like, rounds 5 through 8, Zhilei Zhang gets it done because he likes to start early. And this fight, this is a fight where Deontay Wilder, I think he's gotten better. Like I don't think a lot of people give him credit, as he's gotten a lot better. You know,
Agreed.
he does have skill. But I think it's just like putting it all together in the ring, and then the age factor, because I think that's a big thing in storylines for this fight. For Deontay Wilder, listen, I think he's not going to throw a lot. He's not a guy that throws a lot. He just isn't. And so this fight might start off slow, but I think Zhang has to start off fast if he wants to win this. So it's really interesting. I'm looking at the line, Bryan, and even that plus 120 looks really good. Straight up on the money line.
Well, here's
right? Like I'm taking a look and I'm like, oh, like that looks like that could possibly be a very good bet. And I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, there's value to bet on Deontay Wilder there, because we've seen Wilder be losing in fights and boom, get the knockout and win. Like we've seen that.
the reason why I think this could be different is Joseph Parker deployed a style that I don't think Zhilei Zhang is going to replicate, for better or worse, where Joseph Parker was very crafty getting inside and out. And when he would sort of, it was like he was the one using his range the most, but he would throw from range a little bit and then crowd Deontay Wilder, clinch him before Deontay Wilder could respond to his combination and get going. I don't think Zhilei Zhang's interested in doing that. I think he's just going to stand in front of Deontay Wilder and make this a stand and bang fight. You know, like I think he's going to try to obviously land his straight left hand, because that's going to be his best weapon in this bout. And this is why I don't think this fight is going to the cards. Like I really don't. I don't think this fight is going to the cards. I think somebody's going down with Deontay Wilder. The other part of this is not just the age and how he looked last time, but it's also the wars that he's been in, the Tyson Fury ones, the Luis Ortiz ones. And people forget, like Luis Ortiz fights, I mean, he almost got knocked out the first time and he got rocked again the second time. Like those were legitimate fights that can take a lot out of you. Granted, he started late, so he doesn't have the same exact mileage, and shit, he didn't even see the 5th round in his career until I think he fought Bermane Stiverne and won the title. So there's not a lot of rounds there, but he's been knocked down several times now and has been through some wars. I still think there's a little bit left there. Now, in terms of pick, because you asked me, and I'm gonna get to it because I've been bullshitting too long. I went with Deontay Wilder by knockout, technical knockout, plus 185 at One Prominent Sportsbook. I feel like the I'm gonna get value here. For one, two, I'm gonna buy into because seeing a couple interviews, I'm like, all right, he recognizes the lack of aggression, the place that he needs to get to in order to get the stoppages again and not be the sort of fun loving dude, like be angry again. Does he have that in him? I think for this fight, you could probably drum it up. Zhilei Zhang is kind of in some ways, I mean, obviously a very difficult opponent, but in some ways, stylistically, this is probably who Deontay Wilder needs to see if Deontay Wilder can do the things that he did before in terms of finishing guys. Not somebody who's super crafty, but somebody who's going to be right in front of him, somebody who's not going to provide a lot of movement, and somebody who has their own injury history and is 41 years old. Like, to me, I took Deontay Wilder by knockout, technical knockout, and I think ultimately he does show us like maybe that one more Deontay Wilder moment against an opponent I think who's going to be there for better or for worse.
You know what's funny? I knew you were gonna pick Deontay Wilder, and I knew that
Yeah,
you were gonna pick him by knockout.
yeah,
For me, when I take a look at these two fighters, I look at the age, and then I go back to the saying, "You're only as good as your last performance or your last fight." And I thought Zhang looked better than Deontay Wilder in his last fight. As much as
he did.
Deontay Wilder has, he has the right hand to finish this off against Zhilei Zhang. Zhilei Zhang's a southpaw. Deontay Wilder, this fight is being set up for him to win. But he looked terrible against Joseph Parker. He
Hmm.
couldn't set up that right hand, and Joseph Parker had a great game plan. Will Zhilei Zhang have that game plan? They're two different fighters. Styles make fights. But the one thing about Zhilei Zhang is he's going to come forward, and you got to be a little bit careful doing that with a guy like Deontay Wilder, but he's going to come forward, and I think he has a very good jab for a big guy, to be honest with you. And I think he'll be able to establish that jab. And I do think he's going to cause problems for Deontay Wilder. The thing about Zhang is the one thing that I noticed in that last fight where he lost by majority decision against Joseph Parker, I was questioning his conditioning because I thought he was going to knock out Joseph Parker because Zhang has the power to do that as well. And his power comes in tricky ways. Like you don't even expect it, and boom, you're on the ground. And Joseph Parker did get dropped in that fight, but Zhang couldn't finish him off in that fight. And I wonder if it was the conditioning. So I always go back to the age. But to be honest with you, in the ring, what we saw with these two fighters in their last two fights, Deontay Wilder looked older in boxing age. He just looked older in boxing age than Zhang does. So for me, I'm actually not going to roll with Deontay Wilder. The odds look good in this one. I just don't think he looked good in his last fight. He has the power to win it. If he wins it, I'm not going to be surprised at all. I believe the over-under for this is 7.5. And I was looking at that and I'm like, I don't even know if it I don't know how I was gonna bet this fight, to be honest with you, because my heart was like, oh, I've seen Deontay Wilder like win
Yeah.
so many times, but he just did not look good in his last fight. And Zhang, to me, has looked better. So I'm actually going to roll with Zhilei Zhang by knockout, and it's plus 100. So there is a little bit of value there. I just think right now Zhang has looked better than him. And in boxing years, these guys both have miles, but I think Deontay Wilder's been in more wars. I think Zhang's going to get off to an early start. I don't think Deontay Wilder's going to throw as much in the beginning because he doesn't. Like if you take a look at his punch stats, he's not a volume guy. And I think Zhang is going to be able to get it done. Whether that goes more than 7 rounds or below, I don't even know, because this could be an early fight for either of them. One of these guys is getting knocked out. I don't see this one going the distance. But if it did, I wouldn't be surprised because they're really tough. I just think conditioning on both sides is going to be a thing. But I've got to roll with Zhilei Zhang in this one.
I've even seen the over under at 6.5, and that still made me pause and be like, I don't know which direction that's going to go. I think the stamina point is a key one because with Zhilei Zhang, like he's not somebody who is going to have like a lot of energy late in fights. Like he
No,
died
he
against
fades.
Joseph Parker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what lost him the fight, was after that second knockdown in round 8. He didn't really have much left. And he looked like at one point, like, yo, is he gonna finish this fight? Like, is he okay? Like, he's
Yeah.
older, you know what I mean? So that's the other thing there too. I probably would have taken Zhilei Zhang if he were the underdog here, because in terms of value, like I feel like I'm getting more with Deontay Wilder. and just banking on like, yeah, he'll find that right hand at some point. Maybe he won't. Like, it's not a pick that I'm super confident in.
He's
This is
got
kind,
he's got that in his bag though,
yeah,
where like it could change anything. And we know that Zhilei Zhang sometimes not the best head movement. So you know that the right
yeah.
hand,
Like,
yeah,
that's the thing. It's like if Deontay Wilder is going to have one of these performances one more time, it has to be against somebody who's going to be there. Joseph Parker is crafty. Joseph Parker was a very accomplished amateur. Zhilei Zhang was an accomplished amateur also, but Zhilei
yes.
Zhang is somebody who is going to be right there, like right in front of you.
But he's also
Um,
really tough. That's the thing. Zhilei Zhang is extremely tough, and I think people
yeah,
also question his skill. He's skilled.
no,
Like
he's skilled.
Zhilei
Yeah,
Zhang is going to come at you. He's good, and I think he's going to be able to establish the jab. And if he works the jab against Deontay Wilder, something similar, probably is not going to move around as Joseph Parker does. But I think he'll cause Deontay Wilder some problems. That's why I had to roll with him to
no,
get
he
the
will.
knockout. Yeah.
Like, I don't think Deontay Wilder is going to be winning the majority of the rounds, however long this goes. I mean,
Wilder has to win by knockout. If
yeah,
Wilder's going to win, it's going to be by knockout.
that's the other thing. Like, if you want to bet on Deontay Wilder, like, don't even bother with points, money line. I mean, maybe you'll get a technical decision because of head clashes, orthodox versus southpaw. Like, maybe some weird shit like that happens. But for the most part, like, I don't think I've ever bet Deontay Wilder on the money line before.
Yeah.
Anytime I've bet him, it's always been by knockout, and he's knocked out everyone he's ever fought. Outside of Joseph Parker and Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, we thought he had him finished. Bermane Stiverne, he beat him by decision once, then almost killed him in the rematch. So yeah, I think to me, there's not really a bad bet on this fight. Like, if you think Zhilei Zhang is going to win by knockout, if you think Deontay Wilder is going to win by knockout, I would say just like avoid the decisions, because I don't know if we're going to get one in this fight. But you know, the over under is tantalizing. Like, this is a difficult fight to bet on, and honestly, this is how it should be. We should have difficult times sort of racking our brain who's going to win some of these fights that feel 50-50 ish, and in this case, the winner is going to launch themselves back into contendership, and the loser is going to probably get closer to retirement. One more question I wanted to ask you about this fight. Do you worry at all that because Deontay Wilder's inactivity has been a problem and Zhilei Zhang has been more active lately? However, Zhilei Zhang, this is a quick turnaround for him. We just saw him 3 months ago, less than 3 months ago. He's 41 years old. He looked gassed at the end of that fight. Do you worry at all about the conditioning, given that this is a super quick turnaround for him and somebody at his size and his age and his history?
For me, I think his conditioning is always an issue, though, right? Because that's why he gets started early. That's why I usually always bet Zhang to win between rounds 5 through 8. Like, if you go back and you look at the history of my bets in Zhang fights, it's
Yeah.
rounds 5 through 8 that I usually bet him. And that's because he likes to start off early and he does gas out. And I think it's just also because he's a heavyweight. Like, the guys are going to tire out easily. But I just take a look at both of their conditioning, both of their legs. Both of these guys have mileage. So I'm worried about both of them gassing out, because in that last fight against Joseph Parker, I didn't think Deontay Wilder was going to make it. So I really think this is a fight that could go either way. I'm not too concerned about Zhang because Deontay Wilder does not have a high work rate. I don't think he's going to throw many punches early on. And that's where I think Zhang is going to be able to do some damage. He has to do it early on. So I don't see this going past 10 rounds. So I'm not too worried about the championship rounds. I think this is a fight that you would think gets done within 9 rounds is what I'm thinking.
Probably less. Honestly, we
Yeah.
looked up and this is over. If this is over in the first round, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I could see that going. I could see that going that way.
Yeah. Let's get to some comments here. Hustle Man says Zhang by KO within 6. I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way either. Like, I could see this one being early, or I could see it going a little bit longer than we thought for some strange reason, because they're both really tough. So
Also, man, you get some good value on that. Also, Zhang rounds 1 through 6, you'll get a nice number on that on the sports books.
for sure. Anthony Beck, I think the loser of the fight retires afterwards. I could see that. I see. Here's the thing. I think Zhang has looked better than Wilder. I think Wilder should for sure retire if he loses after this fight. But then I'm sure we'll see him in other fights, like exhibition fights where he'll make bread. You don't think so?
You see, well, exhibition. I don't know.
Like him and Jake Paul.
Do you want to fight Deontay Wilder in exhibition?
No.
I don't.
No, I don't. But I think he could make money like that. I think he
for
could.
sure. I weirdly think because he's people make fun of how he talks because he's from the South, which I think is borderline racist. But anyway, I think he'd be a great commentator. Like he'd be very entertaining. He's charismatic. He's colorful. He's different than a lot of other guys.
It's a
Who
great
would be
interview too.
like, yeah, he's one of my favorite. Like of the fighters I've interviewed in the past, he's one of my favorites. That because like he'll kind of just say whatever,
Yeah, and
and
he has a great story too.
he
Like
means
Deontay
well
Wilder's
too.
story is really good.
Yeah, so I think there's like I can see the future for him when he retires. Like I can see him on desks analyzing fights, things of that nature, and I'm sure he'll be somewhat polarizing in that role. But I think it's something that he could excel at. Like he's very, very charismatic, and I think boxing could probably use some of that.
And I think on the flip side, for a guy like Zhilei Zhang, who's never gotten that big of attention like Deontay Wilder has, I think Zhang has gotten more attention within the last 3 years, if anything. So for him, he's an older fighter. And now, I feel like a lot of people are giving him a lot more respect than they did in previous years, because I really do feel like within the last 3 years, he's been one of those guys that I think is a top heavyweight. But normally, when you think about the heavyweights, you're thinking Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder. But I think Zhang's been right there. So I think the storylines are a little bit different because Wilder, I mean, I think everyone likes to see a Deontay Wilder fight. It's pay-per-view worthy, Deontay Wilder, but I think Zhang's had a different story, but he's been elite at the same time. So both guys, different types of careers, but have both had success. They're both getting older, and this is a fight which will be career defining for both of them for sure. Bryan, any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, and we both thought Zhilei Zhang beat Philip Hergovich and got robbed on the scorecards. A lot of people did. So, like, Zhilei Zhang, I mean, there's a reason after that fight, he still got an interim title shot against Joe Joyce and ended up winning that fight.
Yeah, and some people didn't think so, but we got a comment here as well. Oh, Tyrone the Great, a friend of the show.
Big Bang doesn't move his head enough. He's going to get caught. It's kind of what I was saying earlier. I don't think you disagree with that either. I don't know about he's going to get caught part, but like again, different style than Joseph Parker. Like Deontay Wilder has a better chance of catching Zhang than Parker, in my opinion.
Well, this is exactly what I said. What's the southpaw killer? Literally said this.
Yeah.
It's the right hand. So, and I said he doesn't have the best head movement, but Deontay Wilder has to set it up. He couldn't even set it up against Joseph Parker.
Mm-hmm.
So if Zhang stays busy and establishes the jab, Deontay Wilder is going to have those exact same problems that he had against Joseph Parker, except for Zhang doesn't move around as much as Joseph Parker, right? He could be a little bit flat-footed sometimes and just come forward. So that's the only thing. So if you went with Wilder for this fight to win and to land the right hand, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like he definitely has a chance in this fight.
Michael Buffer. Before. I'm probably butchering that. Correct me in the comments. If Wilder KOs Zhang, Wilder's next interview, he will say AJ is scared, but AJ's next fight will be Dubois or Phillip for the IBF title. Yeah, that's one of the. We're gonna briefly go into the Queensberry versus Matchroom card actually now. Yeah. The 5 versus 5, which I love the concept of 5 versus 5 for like as a wrestling fan, as somebody who loves Survivor Series, SmackDown versus Raw from back in the day, things of that nature. Like, yeah, I'm all for this concept. It's 5 versus 5 from Queensberry, from Matchroom. It helps that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, they have their issues, they have their problems. And Dimitri Bivol is on this card as well, but that's not part of the 5-on-5. Zhilei Zhang, Deontay Wilder is headlining the 5-on-5, but you also have Daniel Dubois versus Philip Hergovich, Nick Ball versus Ray Ford. Trying to remember a couple other fights. Ammo Williams is going to be in action, which, we had Troy Isley on the show and said they wanted to fight Ammo Williams at one point. Not sure if the odds are going to increase or decrease after this.
Raymond Ford, Nick Ball. I don't know if you said that one already, but
that's the one
that's a good fight.
Let's actually stay there for a second, because that's the fight that I'm most interested in after the main event with Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. But Ray Ford and Nick Ball, like that's kind of a banger. I don't know if people like saw Ray Ford's last performance, but he was down on 2 scorecards going into round 12 and got a stoppage win with 9 seconds to go. Star-making performance, won the featherweight title. I like him on the money line in this fight, by the way,
Yeah.
minus 160. I like him to beat Nick Ball.
Yeah, but I think that's actually going to be quite the banger, and that might be a tricky fight for a guy like Ray Ford. But I also think it's going to be interesting to see Dimitri Bivol because it's been a little while since we've seen him in the ring, not against Artur Beterbiev, but just to see how he fights against a guy like Malik Zanad, who I think is a really tricky fighter. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's a tricky fight for him, and I don't think Bivol's a guy that's not gonna take his opponent seriously, because a lot of people are looking at that fight and you look at the line and it's ridiculous. If you donate to the show, we go to your comment right away. Just let you know. Shout out to Tyrone the Great, always donating to the show. Thank you for supporting the mandatory. He says a parrot character bowing down saying thank you. Okay.
I think that's the icon or whatever. It just doesn't come up here because we're looking at it through through this lens and not YouTube. But thank you, Tyrone, as always. Additionally, Bivol, I actually bet him by decision at plus 145. I was stunned that was the number. He's minus 110 to win by knockout, which I don't like. Malik Zanad he's an overlooked contender. He's not a chump, right? Like,
he's undefeated.
Yeah, and Dimitri Bivol is not a power puncher. Like, there was movement betting wise for Dimitri Bivol to win by knockout in his last fight, and that didn't happen. And
more money came in on that. So I had the same thing, Bivol to win by decision at plus 125. I don't think he's going to get the knockout in that one. And I think Malik is actually a really tough fight for him because he's so tricky. Like, he's a tricky fighter. So I think
it's a fight that's going to bore people, is what I think.
Yeah, it might. It's going to definitely be skilled. Malik also has a low lead hand. So sometimes he throws it from the hip. So it's a little bit tricky. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Dimitri Bivol handles him. But I do think Bivol's going to get the win because I still think Bivol, he's like one of the best fighters in the world. Like, I know we were talking about pound for pound after Tyson Fury lost and Usyk won. To me, Bivol's top 5 on that pound for pound list.
Yeah, he's I think I had him in my top 5 actually also.
I think you had him higher than I did.
Yeah, I think I had him maybe exactly 5th. Could have been 4th. Yeah. No, I think it was 5th.
You had 4th. Okay, yeah.
I think it was 5th. Doesn't matter. Because now the person I had 4th has since lost. So he might move up now. We're actually going to probably at some point this summer update our pound for pound list. We're probably overdue in doing that, but
we should do it before the end of the year because too much is going to happen after August. Right, more fights are going to be set up. Yeah. I mean, June is an interesting month, I feel like, because isn't Teofimo Lopez also fighting?
We're supposed to get Teofimo Lopez at the end of the month. We get Xander Zayas soon. And obviously Gervonta Davis, Frank Martin is a big one. Dave Benavidez is also on that card. But yeah, we got some fights coming up in June. Do we care about Ammo Williams versus Hamza Shiraz?
Yeah, I think that's a good fight. I think all the fights are really, really good. What I was saying to Bryan is, other than the main event, though, I don't know if I stay home to watch them, all of them in a row. I don't know if I do that. I'm probably going to catch them later at night and like make sure I catch the main event live. Just because I have a busy Saturday, but like I don't think it's one of those ones where I'm like I'm clearing out my whole entire day and I'm gonna sit and like just watch it. You know what I mean? If that happens, cool. But I'm not. I don't know if it's the card is good. There's some really really good fights on there. If you're a boxing nerd, you're gonna absolutely love it. I think if I can sit and watch all of them, I will. But I don't know if I can do that. But I'll definitely be home for the main event for sure.
Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgović. I think we could talk about this and then get out of here. That's one of the most consequential fights on this card, along with obviously Deontay Wilder versus Zhilei Zhang. We were talking about the heavyweight division. I actually think that you could make a fight between the two winners. Like you could kind of have the Daniel Dubois, Filip Hrgović winner fight against Deontay Wilder, Zhilei Zhang winner. But as somebody mentioned, AJ and the IBF have kind of been circling each other. Like, when is AJ going to get the title shot? Whatever the case may be. We'll see what happens there. But Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgović,
didn't he get the technical knockout against Jarrell Miller? Because they're saying Hrgović, like if you take a look at the odds, Vegas is saying that Hrgović is likely to get the knockout TKO. But I thought Daniel Dubois had a pretty good performance in his last fight. So I think this fight is going to be a lot closer than people think.
I think Daniel Dubois can win this fight.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. I think Hrgović, though, is definitely more skilled. Dubois, though, looked pretty decent against Jarrell Miller. Like, that was a tough fight. That was not an easy fight.
I thought he was gonna lose. I even live bet Jarrell Miller at one point because of how Danny Dubois looked. And part of the question about Danny Dubois was like, hey, his mental toughness, is it really there? He kind of folds. He folded against Usyk, he folded against Joe Joyce, and it's like, can he get over this mental hurdle? And he was tested, and he ended up stopping Jarrell Miller in the last round of that fight after weathering multiple storms early on. And Jarrell Miller, like somebody who, remember, like he before all the steroids, he was going to get the title shot against Anthony Joshua in 2019 before Andy Ruiz ended up getting the shot. And then history was changed sort of forever in the heavyweight division as a result. But Jarrell Miller was like a real contender at one point, is the point. So that's not a small win.
And also for Hrgović, I was one of those people that thought Zhang beat him.
Me too.
I was pissed after that fight because I feel like Hrgović has been one of those guys that they've been kind of setting up, and he's always like in the conversation, but we never see him in a massive fight. So this is the one that's possibly going to get Filip Hrgović or Daniel Dubois against Anthony Joshua. And by the way, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us on the Mandatory TKO. You can also find us on the audio side as well. If you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review. Bryan, any final thoughts before we get up and out of here?
Are we doing a live show on Saturday?
Probably not. No.
Probably not, right? Okay.
Yeah, I won't be able to. I'll be busy. But
yeah. Our next one will probably be, well, other than the afternoon one, but our next post-fight live show will probably be Gervonta Davis and Frank Martin and Dave Benavidez. We'll keep mentioning him because he's on that card too. That's going to be June 15th. Other than that, yeah, we'll be live during the week and we'll talk about some stuff. We'll see if you know, we'll see if we'll have more stuff next week. I'm not going to say too much, actually. Let's just get off of it. But yeah, Gervonta Davis, that'll be the next post-fight live show.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for rocking with us this early morning, guys. If you want more live shows, definitely drop that in the comments and enjoy the fights this weekend.